Well, I'll try to make this brief, so wish me luck. Anyway, I'm trying to get you ready for the themes and for the third essay. So, confirmation bias, it will come in useful when people bent the facts about Willingham's case because they thought he was guilty, or they were blinded by their assumption of his guilt. So we have some simple things like the car, he moved it. If he's guilty, it's like, oh, all he cared about his car is his car, let the kids die. But if he's innocent, you think, oh, he wanted to get the car away from the house because it would explode. Make it a little bit safer for the firefighters to go. Connect with it. Faulty fire forensics, this is the DNA of our first read, trial by fire. Pretty easy to suss out. You just look at the fire forensics that made him guilty in the first part and search the e-document for that, and you'll find those same elements, crazed glass, pore patterns, etc., being used to make him innocent in the latter half. So that's pretty easy. You just compare the two. You have the guilty presentation in the first half, and then you have the exonerating presentation in the second. Flawed expert witnesses may not be enough on its own, but when you look at the psychiatrist Grigson and the other guy whose name I forget, they obviously are just making up a bunch of nonsense. And for that matter, you can also look at the fire forensics, but that's such a big can of worms. That's a separate category. However, the fire Vasquez was very convincing to the jury. So you can look at that and look at how expert witnesses are so influential, even if they're totally crackers. They can convince a jury. And then justice for rich versus the poor actually overlaps the bad lawyers as well, because one of the distinguishing things in our justice system is that often poor people tend to get tougher sentences, execution instead of life, for example, because even if they did the same crimes, their lawyers aren't as good. So bad lawyers, Willingham is a great example of that, and you can talk about how the many ways his lawyer failed him, and that's really cool. And then you can also look at a more general search of how justice works for the rich versus how it works for the poor. So that might make a good two-pronged essay. Just giving you ideas. You can combine these in a number of ways. Jailhouse snitches doesn't really do a lot of good there as a full essay topic, but it's an ad if you just want to talk generally about how, Willingham had all of these things turned against him. It's just a good kind of a bit point, maybe half a paragraph, just to explain how unfortunate he was. So anyway, those are the keywords, but what's even better, when you go to the Chabot Library homepage, and then you look for library orientation guides, and then you scroll all the way down, not very far, to English 1, Flynn, then you'll find that our librarian, one of them, Norm Buckwald, you can email him here anytime, gave just a terrific presentation on how to research this. And so I'm going to just go over a couple of things. You do have homework, and I want you to get, let's say, 4 or 5 sources that you're going to add to the article Trial by Fire for your research essay, which will be due on the 24th. That's the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And by the way, next week on Monday, we'll have another timed essay, but we'll really have a timed essay. So anyway, I want to kind of get that stacked up for you here so that you can finish your research by the end of this week, Friday the, whatever the heck it is, the 15th. And that way, if you have any questions, we can go over them on Monday. But basically, wrap it up. We're not going to spend a lot more time on this topic because you're well set up for it. So let's look at it here. Pardon me, it's very difficult to talk about one things because a zillion come up. One of the great things Norm did is he provided these search terms. That is, these are the terms that really work when you're going into the databases. And the better the search term, the more complete, or the more robust the records you'll turn up in a database. So By the way, wrongful conviction, the better search term is actual innocence. And that's something Norman said you'll just get a lot more hits on that, because that's how the Library of Congress, which kind of provides the guide to searching in this country, identifies wrongful conviction as actual innocence. Anyway, these are the terms to return to when you do your searches. Another thing Norm showed us and made for us, it's really good, by the way, you take those search terms, and he's got some of the key databases. So let me see if this thing behaves. Pardon me. I'm thinking I'm in the library again. Okay. And so I think it's right here. Databases. There you go. All right. So the criminal justice abstracts, that'll be good for getting kind of a background general terminology. When you get, and that will work pretty well, but you're not going to get a ton of information. If you go to Articles Plus, you'll get an absolute ton of information. And I think any of these would work, but we worked with this one here just to get more scholarly type information. And then if you want, Articles Plus will give you anything from newspaper to scholarly to journals. It's just really robust. So that's one thing. And then, use those search terms, or subject terms he calls them, and go into those databases he linked for us. That's a really solid way to start with it. And then another thing that he provided that I think is also very helpful here. Let's see what he's got for databases. Yeah, that's what I wanted there. Another thing he provided that is really helpful is this section called Web Pages. You've got a National Registry of Exonerations. This I really liked. But National Registry of Exoneration arson cases, this is even better, because as you scroll down the arson cases, you get to Willis Ernest Ray, exonerated in 2004. This is the guy that's mentioned in the David Grant article, Trial by Fire, who had the exact same guilty verdict of murder as Willingham, but he happened to have that New York law firm that donated millions of dollars of legal expertise. And so it's just craziness. Our Hearst, the arson investigator from the article, said you could just plug Ernest Ray Willis's name into Cameron Todd Willingham's case, and you have the identical prosecution. The identical charge, and the execution was the end point. But he got exonerated. So if you're looking at rich versus poor, well, he, by good fortune, had this New York firm that donated millions of dollars of legal help into setting him free. Roughly, let's see, about 8 months after Willingham was executed. So this is really, really excellent here. And then also, another thing, these are all people who were basically exonerated for arson. So look up a couple of murder cases. Check out a couple others. If you want to add a little bit of personal story to it, go for it. You've got a ton here. And by the way, this is not going to be a scholarly database, but it's going to provide kind of an overview of the story. And the other thing it will do is you've got the guy's name now, and you can kind of go into the other databases if you want to see, like Articles Plus, to see more articles about him and his case. It's kind of a parallel story to Willingham's, and it really would work well. So that one works quite well on the databases or the web pages rather he created for us, this section. And another thing that works really well is the Innocence Project. If you look into that one and search the name Willingham, you'll get 180 sources or something. It's really crazy. There's a ton there. And so that's another good place to get a lot of good copy on him. And what do we get? 191 results. Now, another thing, and Norman Buchwald, our librarian, is leery about it, but I'm not as leery, is Wikipedia. And the reason I'm not is that even though there are legitimate concerns that the people who write this are not really held to such a high standard as people who write, say, journals and other things that are peer-reviewed. One thing Wikipedia has that's really useful is underneath all the text, they have great references. You can even see the one we use as a primary reading, Trial by Fire from the New Yorker. It'll link to that. And so this is a great way to find articles, really great for searching. So I would recommend it for that. One of the reasons English teachers don't like it is that years ago when this started, people would just plop down whole paragraphs from Wikipedia and make believe it was their own writing. It's kind of like using AI today, and you have to give all those F's because people aren't thinking, and they're cheating. But take it for what it's worth. It usually provides a pretty good background to the story, and oftentimes really great, like 54 citations. So you've got plenty of room to cruise through and find all the information you need for your research homework. Again, 4 or 5 great sources is what I'm looking for. I'm going to hang this up right now, and I hope that helps you get a bearing on how to approach the next leg of preparing to write Essay 3.